Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel where I use astrology to analyze people's charts and movies, music, and all sorts of things. And today I'm going to look at Kate Bush's chart. I have it pulled up here. Let's see, Kate Bush. And I was debating whether I should make this the first video on my channel and if I should record it today. And I'm going to cover Kate Bush as well as the song Running Up That Hill, Deal with God, as well as the album that it was made for, the Hounds of Love album. And I did a tarot reading, which I use facade.com's free tarot. And I'll usually do a yes or no spread of 3 cards, where the first card is a yes, second card's a no, and third card sort of emphasizes the overall question and the results. And I just wanted to include this in the video because this is quite incredible. I just did a reading for this, whether this should be my first video on Kate Bush and the song. And for the yes, it came up as the Popess, or the High Priestess, and the Empress, the 2 divine feminine cards. And then the no answer was the Devil, which in this case is just indicating to stay away from the devil and to go towards the divine feminine in this case. So yeah, Kate Bush, very much someone associated with the divine feminine, I would say. I did, she's an incredible musician, and she brought a unique flavor of femininity to pop music in the 80s with a very advanced artistic just ability, because she not only wrote her own songs, wrote her own lyrics, but she also played a lot of the instruments, and of course she sings incredibly well, and she even does her own production, which to this day the only artist I've ever heard of who does that, who's female bodied, that I know of, is Grimes. Other than that, I mean, even among male artists, that's very unusual for someone to produce their own music and be a pop singer, songwriter, and play their own instruments. I mean, Trent Reznor, who owes a lot to Kate Bush, and if you listen to some of Kate Bush's music, you'll see, because Kate Bush was the first person to use the techniques of sampling in a pop music context as a producer and songwriter. Her and Peter Gabriel in the 80s might have been the first. And they both shared techniques. That's kind of a tangent. But yeah, Trent Reznor got that from her, and a lot of people sort of were inspired by her use of sampling in the process of songwriting, which is very common now with pop music and hip hop especially. But all that being said, let's jump into the video, the analysis. So I did Kate Bush has not released, as far as I know, her birth time, but her birthday is publicly known. Last fall, because I'm a big fan of Kate Bush, I did a process known as rectification, where I just mapped out all the major events in Kate Bush's life as far as the ones that are publicly known, like the birth of her first child, the release of all of her albums, and things like that. I think maybe her divorce or marriage might have been in there too. And so I used that, using different techniques, to narrow down her birth time within a certain window. And I narrowed it down to 1 a.m. So if some birth time is released for Kate Bush, other than that, then I could do an updated video based on new information. But from my own analysis, using the process of rectification to determine her birth time, or have a hypothesized probable birth time, I landed at 1 a.m., which puts her ascendant in Rohini. Now I'm going to use Indian astrology techniques, which involves these 27 signs. You could see in Aries how there's Ashwini and Bharani and Kritika, and it goes on and on. And then in the end of Pisces, you see that number 27. That's because there's 27 of these Indian signs known as Nakshatras. And I'm going to be interpreting her chart and all the charts today using a star-based zodiac, which is a little different than the way people usually look at signs. So usually you would see, conventionally, people would say that Kate Bush has a Leo sun sign. However, sidereally, it goes back 24 degrees and it puts her sun in Cancer. So that's just an example there. So starting with her ascendant, that's the first thing I would look at. And I'm going to start looking at her chart, and then I'll look at the song and the album, I suppose. So her ascendant is in Rohini, which is it's really the sign for the high priestess. It's divine femininity. It represents fertility. It represents a sort of creative abundance, but in the realm of practical hard work, because it's in Taurus. And so Taurus is the fixed earth sign, and the ascendant represents what somebody is known for, what their strength is, the way they operate in the world most of the time. And so Kate Bush, she's known for being this goddess-like figure that works really hard and is very creative. So, and it's the most feminine sign out of all 27 in the zodiac. So I would say that's pretty dead on. Of course, this is based on my own rectification of her birth time. If information comes out about her birth time that I've missed, then I could update this, and it'd be interesting to see how that changes it. But this is what I landed on when I did this hour or two analysis to try to figure it out last fall. And yeah, so she's known for being hardworking and representing the divine feminine. It's pretty clear. Then the next thing we would look at in Indian astrology or Vedic astrology is, as it's also known, is the moon sign, which represents the mind of a person, which is going to tell a lot about them. And her moon is in the 9th house, which is the house of good fortune, good luck, and it's the house of sort of religious aspects of treating something religiously in a way. So her mind is in the ninth, being in the 9th house, her moon being in the 9th house means she has like a religious outlook to life, a very spiritual outlook to life, not necessarily fundamentalist religious, but just spiritual. And her moon is in the nakshatra Uttara Ashada in Capricorn. And this sign indicates a feeling of great empowerment, a feeling of almost like taking your strengths for granted, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's the kind of sign that a king or queen would have. It just shows that this person does not doubt their skills. You know how some people feel like what they do is never good enough. Kate Bush is not like that at all. She knows exactly the value of her music and her abilities and her effect on culture and pop culture through the 80s up until now. Like, I was just listening to her recent interview about Stranger Things, and she's not fazed by having a #1 hit and breaking a Guinness World Record at all, because it's the first time, it's the longest, what's her first #1, it's her first top 10 hit in the US, and it's the first time a #1 hit has ever happened 37 years after the release of the song. And she doesn't even seem fazed by it. She just thinks it's interesting because she knows the value of her music. She's never been insecure from the time she was very young about knowing how great her music is. And as well as her presentation of her music with her music videos and photography and dancing, because she really is a full package song and dance woman. She even directed a short film for her album, The Red Shoes, that's amazing. It has some really great stuff in it. I think she might have directed most of her music videos, actually. And she's incredible. Yeah. In her video for another song on the album, Cloud Bursting, she even has this incredible actor in the video with her. So she even got like a great Hollywood actor to be in her music video. That shows you how so her mind has always, and Uttara Ashada, the moon being there, it's like the sign that a producer or a director would have, not just a regular artist, but someone who sees the big picture and has a lot of confidence around it. And her midheaven is also in Capricorn, which means she's known for being like this. And she's known for the spiritual aspects of her music, because that's what the ninth house has to do with. The midheaven falling into Shravana indicates that she's known for it's a bit more feminine and a bit more receptive. In fact, I'm curious about the degree of that. It's at 11 degrees and 37 minutes. Yeah. Um, I think that's just outside of the range of this other special thing that could be there. But her midheaven might actually be on this special spot that's in the first degree of Shravana and the last 3 degrees of Uttarashada. That has like a supreme level of confidence. It's not listed here, but it's actually the 28th hidden nakshatra of, it's called Abhijit, and her midheaven is basically right on that cusp of Abhijit, which these are Indian astrology signs that give a lot more detail. But we could see this as a great deal of confidence in Capricorn around spirituality, if that makes sense. That's where her mind is at. And then her sun is on the direct opposite of the midheaven. It's at the IC point, which is a person's most personal inner world. And the sun represents somebody's higher self or soul expression, their true, deeper expression of themselves. And so this is found in her third house in the nakshatra Pushya in the center of Capricorn. And Capricorn is also about feelings and I'm sorry, Cancer, I mean. The sun is in Cancer in the sign of Pushya in the third house, and right on top of the IC, which is about the internal world. And Cancer is about the internal world and feelings. Pushya is actually the Empress. As far as the tarot cards, like how I did that tarot reading on this beforehand, the High Priestess, which is this top card here, is Rohini in astrology in these Indian signs. And the Empress would actually be Pushya, because it's the sign of basically the guru, but with a very feminine, nurturing energy attached to it. And so her deeper self, her soul, is expressed when she's, I mean, it's interesting because it's on her IC. So this is something that people wouldn't necessarily see about her. And she's never really said too much about what a lot of her songs are about or where she derives inspiration from. But she's always had a deep spirituality in her music. And she's even written songs that are about relationships to spiritual groups and spiritual teachers. She has a music video for a song that I love called, is it called Lucy? That's not what it's called. I think it's track 4 on the album The Red Shoes. And she has a music video for this song where she actually includes the woman. It might be Lucy, but it's not. I don't think it is. But it's this woman. The title of the song is named after this spiritual teacher she had in England. And the spiritual teacher, who's this woman, this wise female guru to her, is actually the star of the music video with Kate Bush. And you also see like these archangels of Gabriel and Michael in the video, which is part of the spiritual teaching. And actually that song she calls a prayer. The song, she opens all of her more recent concerts that she did with that song, because she views that song as a prayer that sets the right energy for the rest of the show. And so that shows you how deeply spirituality and her relationship to gurus has been in her life. And I could go on about other songs she's written that are also showing that. But her sun in Pushya in the third house shows that she's energized. The third house is all about being energized. So she gets energized by connecting to other spiritual teachers and finding that aspect of herself. And she won't reveal that at all publicly. I mean, even when she did the music video with that woman, it's not really, I don't think she said too much about it. She just made the video, and it's a very mysterious video, actually. with lots of symbolism in it. And yeah, so what does this mean? I mean, somebody's sun sign is not the thing you'll usually see about them anyway. But it's the thing that will be activated if they are living their full self-actualization of themselves, which Kate Bush is or has been in her life when she made her music, because that's her sharing this highest version of what she has to offer the world in creativity. Now, yeah, so the spiritual wisdom, good fortune, I mean, spiritually minded and very empowered with the moon sign. I mean, she's just a very spiritually focused person who has a feminine version of that guidance that she offers the world. I mean, I haven't watched Stranger Things, but the song "Running Up the Hill," it's I heard her describe it in this interview as it's being used as like a talisman that somebody puts on the cassette to help them like fight some kind of demon or something. And so yeah, what else can we see about Kate Bush's chart? Let's see. I mean, there's nothing in the fifth house, which is the house of creativity. So that's very curious. But if we look for the ruler of the fifth house, that would be Mercury. We find that in the fourth house, in Leo. And so, I mean, it's in the sign of Maga in Leo, which is the sign of the king and a sign of great confidence, but it's in the fourth house, which is about her internal world and her home. And Mercury is about communication. So her ability to communicate, and it's about her intellect. So her ability to put together ideas and communicate from her inner world happens at home, that she writes music from home. And that's where she gains her confidence from to compose from. That's really what I see. Her creativity comes from having a solid home life. I mean, that's another way to look at that, because the ruler of the fifth house, which is Mercury, is in the fourth house. So she has she has Saturn and the part of fortune, which indicates good fortune, in the sign of Jayestha at the end of Scorpio in the seventh house. So this shows that she will undergo relationships that end that will bring about good fortune for her when they end. And I don't know, I mean, this is another thing where there's not too much known publicly about Kate Bush's relationships. She did have a relationship long term with a songwriting partner, or he didn't write the music. He might have written some of the music, but he didn't write the songs with her. He might have just helped her produce. He was her engineer and co-producer on all of her best albums, including Hounds of Love, which Running Up That Hill is on. And in fact, when that album first was premiered, was the first time they were ever in public. But this idea of like Saturn indicating loss and limitations, there's something about loss and limitations around relationship that gives her her greatest fortune in life. I mean, if you think about the song Running Up That Hill and how she's said recently that it was about this desire to change positions between a man and a woman to see what it's like for each other. And she's saying that from the female perspective, of course. And but the lyrics of the song, they're just so longing, you know, where she's saying, if I only could make a deal with God, you know, and this running up the hill, there's this feeling of like wanting to fix something or heal something. And I mean, that would only come about because of pain and loss. And so Saturn and Jayestha and Scorpio is deep emotional, you know, waters. And Jayestha is the most Scorpio subsigns or Indian signs known as Nakshatras. So Saturn and Jayestha, it's indicating this long-term perspective of figuring things out and thinking through things. I mean, this is really what Jayestha is about, and it's what Scorpio is ultimately about. It's about going very deeply into things to solve a problem, basically. Yeah, and it's the most feminine of all 12 signs, actually, because it's a water sign, which is feminine, and it's a fixed modality. It's the fixed water sign, which is the feminine modality. And it's also an even number sign. It's the eighth sign. So in this very watery feminine sign, having Saturn, which is also about wisdom and long-term thinking and limitations, in Jayestha, which is about long-term planning things out. So there's good fortune in working through emotions to plan things out. But having Saturn in the seventh house could show that some of her greatest fortune comes when relationships end. And actually, after her relationship ended with that person, and she wrote a beautiful song about it. It was the last song on the album, The Red Shoes. She took a long hiatus after that and focused entirely on raising her child. So, which goes back to her home life being really important to her, creativity, and more than that, even, I'm sure. But let's see. Yeah, the ruler of the seventh house, which would be Mars. So we can go see it, look at her Mars in the 12th house. So the ruler of the seventh house is in the 12th house. So this gives a double effect of this idea of loss of relationships being a key to her life. And this, for a songwriter, that's the kind of thing, like Kate Bush writes very emotionally evocative songs that are longing, and it's the kind of thing that can happen through loss of close relationships. Like that's the kind of thing that can help inspire some of her very deeply longing, cathartic types of songs that she's written. And she also has Lilith and Ketu together with Mars in the 12th house, together in the first part of Aries in this nakshatra called Ashwini. And that is, well, yeah, I mean, that Mars in Aries is going to be very happy. Ketu in Ashwini is very happy because Ketu is the ruler of Ashwini. Mars is the ruler of Aries. So she has a very fiery disposition, because an empowered Mars in Aries is going to be very ambitious, and Ketu in Ashwini is going to be very focused on trying to get what it wants. And Lilith shows where her trauma lies, the things that have wounded her in life, and her response to them as being either to retreat or to be obsessively focused on something, to be withdrawn or obsessive. And because Lilith is right on top of Ketu, which is the definition of obsessive, in an Ashwini, in a Ketu ruled nakshatra of Ashwini, which Ashwini is all about, it's symbolized by these twin horsemen that are trying to get soldiers to help go into battle with them. And it's the first nakshatra of the whole zodiac. So it's trying to get something started. And it's in the cardinal fire sign of Aries, which is all about starting a fire, starting something with passion. And so she has all of this fire and passion, which you feel in a song like Running Up the Hill. And yeah, so, and having Lilith there shows that she's going to put her own past traumas obsessively into this passionate, creative act. Now, the fact that all of this is happening in her 12th house, if I got her birth time correct, this could change if her birth time is incorrect. But assuming we're correct with the birth time, then this would mean that she's inspired by loss and transformation. And from her very first album, she was writing songs that were about transformation. And she was always very interested in spiritual transformation. The 12th house, as well as the 8th and 9th, are the three most spiritually focused houses, as well as the 4th as well, actually. And so she has placements in 3 out of 4 of those houses. And so having all of this fire in the house of loss and transformation and giving energy back that has been acquired for transformational purposes, it really feeds into the creativity of Well, it would feed into her inspiration that you could see with Saturn in the part of fortune in Scorpio in Jayesta. Now, feminine, or I mean, I'm sorry, Venus, which is going to be the feminine beauty sign, as well as the aesthetics and artistic sign. It's another place we can look real quick. Her Venus is in Gemini in Ardra, and Ardra is very kind of it's ruled by Rahu, which is the north node of the moon. Ketu is the south node of the moon, by the way. And so her Venus in Ardra shows that she's going to find beauty in something kind of chaotic, because Rahu is chaotic. Ardra is symbolized by a storm, and it has a very harsh quality to it. And so her Venus, it means that she's going to be very artistically inspired and benefit materially, because this is in the second house, which is all about having your basic human needs met as far as material things. So having her Venus in Ardra is going to show that she finds beauty in conflict. And that's also very good for a songwriter, because the drama of transformation and loss and conflict are the things that, you know, people are going to be the sort of very stirred up by and resonate with if you can write good songs about things like this. She doesn't, even though she's a very spiritually focused person, she doesn't write songs in general that are just very like subdued and peaceful. I mean, she sort of matured into that if you listen to her most recent albums, but earlier on there was this real longing and striving, and I probably won't go into it in this video, but or here I can show real quickly. There's this thing called the Vimshatari Dasha, which is, it's a timing technique in Indian astrology. And so this is the way I sort of helped find her. This is the main thing I used to rectify her chart and see what time she might have been born. And so what this shows us, you can see these times here, that she was in a Mars period from age 12 to age 18. You see that? And she was in a Rahu period from age 19 to 36, which is from January 1978 to January 96. That was pretty much the whole time period where she was at her peak of fame and making all of her best albums. I think her first album came out right before then, at the end of her Mars period, maybe. But Climbing Up the Hill and just all of the great stuff she made in the 80s and early 90s and the end of the 70s, the bulk of her work in just period happened during a Rahu period, which is very interesting. Because a Rahu period is going to have a lot of chaos, a lot of conflict. I mean, things can go awry, but you can also become very famous in a Rahu period. It's not when people are going to have the most peace. It's when they're going to have the most, perhaps the most growth in their life and the most challenges. And so her Venus in Ardra, which is a Rahu ruled sign, shows that she would be equipped to find beautiful things or to turn challenging times in her life into something very beautiful through song. And yeah, so I think that's very relevant. I mean, we could also look at the placement of her Rahu, which is in conjunction with Jupiter and Neptune. I'll take the vertex out because I don't, well, maybe we could leave the vertex in, because the vertex is thought of as a second descendant. It could relate to a partner or something like that. So, I mean, if we look at the vertex in this sense, it's echoing things we see in the seventh house with her Saturn in the seventh house. And, you know, what else did we see here? Well, you could say Venus and Ardra, you know, which Venus can also be the love life and romantic life of somebody, involving conflict in Ardra. So this is echoed again in Jupiter in Indian astrology is thought to be the signifier for husband, for a woman, basically. And Jupiter being in the sixth house would indicate potentially conflicts with a husband or conflicts with a partner. And the vertex is doubling down on this idea of conflict, or this idea of a partner being involved in the sixth house. Now it's all happening in Libra. Some of it's happening in trine to that Venus, I believe. I don't see the trine line. The Venus is at 16 degrees. No, it's not quite trine. That Neptune was, the way it's drawn makes it look like it is, but no. Okay, so there's not a trine relationship to the, so that's not so important. But Jupiter is all about expansion and happiness, and Rahu is all about chaos. So again, this is showing that like the most chaotic part of her life is going to actually bring some of the most beautiful, happiest times in her life at the same time. It's going to be a whole kaleidoscopic mixture of emotions, and all of this happening in the sixth house of conflict and problems, and her vertex, which means people that are very important to her, close in her life, are going to be involved with this. And all of this is happening in Chitra, which is the sign symbolized by a jewel, and it represents a very beautiful, very beautiful experience or perception of reality. And so Jupiter in Chitra is very auspicious because because Jupiter is already about beauty, and so is Chitra, but this is happening in the house of obstacles and service, you could say as well. But I think in this sense, obstacles makes more sense to emphasize. And yeah, so it's a mixed bag for her. Even her spirituality is in conjunction here with Neptune. So it's showing that she has this path in her life of finding the spiritual, the beautiful, the expansive, happy times in the midst of the chaos of Rahu and the surprises, which is indicated by, again, this timing system that shows that she released most of her albums, period, and all of her greatest albums by most people's standards during this about 18-year period of Rahu from age 19 to 36 when she got really famous. So, and just made all this incredible music. So yeah, that's pretty much her chart. Now I'm gonna pause and then move on to analyzing the album Hounds of Love and the single Running Up the Hill. Actually, before I finish looking at Kate Bush's chart, I want to apply this technique, this Hellenistic or ancient, um, I guess Roman or Mesopotamian technique called sect, and determining whether she has a day or a night chart, and based on that, who the rulers of her entire chart are. And we could actually start this process by first looking at the ruler. Well, the first thing we would do is determine if it's a day or a night chart. And her sun is below the horizon of the ascendant descendant, so this would make it a night chart. And her moon and sun are both in what are called cadent houses, which is the 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th, which means they can't be the ruler of her chart. This would mean that the ruler of the ascendant would be the ruler of her chart. So the ascendant is in Taurus, the ruler of that is Venus. So Venus is the ruler of her chart with this birth time information. So Venus it means that her chart is ruled by femininity, by beauty. And you know, the album that she made after Hounds of Love is called The Sensual World, and she's really known for expressing a feminine perspective, you know, and that whole synchronicity of me drawing the two cards, the High Priestess and the Empress, the second and third card with zero being, or with the Fool of the tarot deck. So that's pretty incredible that her chart would be ruled by Venus, and the ruler of Venus, this would be called the dispositor, would be Mercury in Maga. And so her mind being very confident, with the confidence of a king, and communicating that from the 4th house, you know, this is the thing that really informs her femininity to really shine with her expression of beauty through what she creates and what she shares with the world. Now, the secondary ruler of the chart would be the moon in Capricorn, In Uttara Ashada, this is also about her mind being very empowered. In Uttara Ashada, it's a nakshatra that's all about victory and empowerment. And this house, the dispositor of this sign would be Saturn, because Saturn rules Capricorn. And so this feeling of loss is somehow giving her this wisdom because of that part of fortune with the Saturn in Jayestha. This is giving her, somehow that's the secret ruler to her mind, the moon being full of confidence. And then finally, meaning she's learned from the losses in her life, and they've shown her how to think in a very methodical way that you would find at the end of Scorpio, with Saturn especially, just really being good at taking one's time. I mean, she takes decades between releasing albums sometimes, and her song became a #1 hit decades after it was released. So all of that is very indicative of Saturn being behind this empowered moon in Uttara Ashada. And then finally, her sun would be the third, in command ruler of her chart. And this is expressed through feminine wisdom in Pushya. And so this is the third ruler of her chart. And the dispositor of this would be the moon. So this goes back to the moon, because the moon rules Cancer. So this divine feminine wisdom that's deep within her, that's sort of fueling all of her actions and creativity and communication, that is being empowered by her mind, the confidence she has in her mind, which again is informed by Saturn and its deep, more long-term, hard-won wisdom through loss, learning limitations that are healthy, that will help her achieve her goals in a practical way, so that her mind isn't just deluded in thinking that she's, in charge of everything, where she actually has this something behind it that is very methodical and patient and understands how things can come and go very quickly, so she doesn't take them for granted. So the challenges in her chart, well, we already talked about the Mars, Lilith, and Ketu, which it's like she uses those challenges to create something great. And then when she goes through the Rahu period, and the Rahu elements of her life are also going to be tied together with the beauty of her life, and that she represents the archetype of someone who really learns from their challenges, and that whatever traumas and woundedness that she goes through in life, she's going to transmute that publicly into beautiful art, which is Chitra, is the jewel. So it's all about finding the beauty where there are these challenges because of Rahu there with Jupiter. And I guess finally, I will mention that her Chiron in Dhanishta, which is the wounded healer, in the same house and sign of Capricorn, 9th house of the moon, and her midheaven. So this means she's also known for this wounded healer, being a wounded healer in the realm of spirituality and transmuting her woundedness into things that are spiritually healing for herself and others. And Dhanishta is all about orchestrating things together. It's symbolized by a drum, which is interesting because like the sampled drums on Running Up That Hill are so iconic, and a lot of her songs that's true for. The first song on one of her, what was her album called? Blanking. But this song, she has this other song with sampled drums that's just so great. I think it's called Something in Your Lap. Maybe it's called Sat in Your Lap, but it's the first song on one of her other albums. And so, Dhanishta is symbolized by the drum, and it's all about an orchestra. It's all about orchestrating together different things to create something beautiful at the end of Capricorn, at the beginning of Aquarius. And so her use of the sampler wasn't just like one sample and done. She would play every instrument, and she would use the sampler in this way where it would basically be a band in a box. Like years and years and years before that was easily done through computer software. She was doing that with a hardware piece of a keyboard. And she took the time, it took her years to be able to master that skill. And it really wasn't until the Hounds of Love that she had mastered it. And so, yeah, so that's that. Now we can jump into to the music. And I have 3 charts up here. I don't know if we'll look at all in the same level of depth, but maybe first we should just look at the song, Running Up the Hill, Running Up That Hill. Wait, that's not it. Here it is. Running Up That Hill, A Deal with God. That was the original title. And so the ascendant for this one is in Chitra. And so we know what day this was released, and I placed it as being a London release at noon when the stores would have opened roughly. And I don't think the single would have been available on the same day internationally in 1985. So I think it would have been available in England on that date. I couldn't find any confirmation that there was a US release. Otherwise, we could have placed it in Los Angeles, which would have changed this a bit. But anyway, her ascendant, the song Ring Up That Hill, it's known for being just incredibly beautiful. And that's Chitra. The ascendant is what it's most well known for. It's what it's most immediately good at. Let me double check. Okay, I'm still recording. Good. So yeah, that ascendant in Chitra, in the end of Virgo shows that something physically has been mastered, her mastery of the use of her tools and technology, the Fairlight sampler that she made the entire song with just about. And yeah, it's just a masterpiece of a song. And Chitra, if there's any nakshatra out of all 27 that would indicate a masterpiece work of art, it would be Chitra. So that makes perfect sense because it's symbolized by a jewel. And it really means beauty. And the mind of the song is in Uttara Bhadrapada, which is in Pisces. So the moon in the middle of Pisces indicates that the mind of the song is in the realm of bringing things down to earth that have been gathered already. That the song, it's expressing longing, but it's not doing it in a way, it's doing it in a way where she's sort of already thought through the whole process, because the album Hounds of Love has a very clear sequence to it. In fact, the album is 2 albums. There's a second part to the album. I'm blanking on the name of that right now, but it's a very different vibe, totally different. On the record, they were like 2 different albums on side A and side B. And so the moon being in Uttara Bhadrapada is very watery and it's very grounded. It's in the middle of Pisces, and it's all about the effort it takes to ground high-minded spiritual breakthroughs. And it's all about bringing things down to earth after there's already been this kind of purification process that was more intense. Uttara Bhadrapada is very intense, but it's very grounding. So that drum beat in the song is very grounding, and the message of the song is very clear. I mean, she's longing for something, and she's talking about this deal with God that she would make, hypothetically, but it doesn't feel like she's confused. It feels like she knows who she is and what she's saying in the song. So that's really what I could say about that. Then the sun of the song is in Ashlesha, which is about entanglement. It's a sign at the end of Cancer with she's got Mercury there too. But Ashlesha, and actually Mercury is the ruler of Ashlesha. So there's this Ashlesha is about attachment and entanglement, and it's the sun together with Mercury and Ashlesha. Well, the sun is about the essence of what the song's really about. So it's about this entangled dynamic with her and another person where she wants to save them or show them something or figure something out for them. And but the Mercury there shows that she has an understanding of what she's trying to say and do. Like her heart and soul are longing for this thing that can't really happen. If the song is about a man and woman changing bodies, then that can't really happen literally. But so there's this understanding of her heart's longing to be entwined with someone and for them to understand her better, for her to understand them better. It's really this yin yang dynamic of, you know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus kind of thing, and not being able to really see eye to eye ever, you know, because they're the realities of the energies of yin and yang are so different that anybody who has a lot of one of those energies is going to have a very difficult time relating to the opposite energy. And so, and that will usually take place, you know, in male female bodies, but there's other versions of that too that can also happen. It's really about the energy entanglement, and in Australasia it's about them being entangled in a way that's confusing and hard to break free from the confusion of. But having Mercury there shows that she's really figuring out, the song is figuring out and making the most of that. It's really empowered by a knowledge of what it truly is. It's not, again, like a lot like the moon in Uttara Bhadrapada, it's not confused by this dynamic. It's actually just very clearly expressing the challenge of this dynamic in a very archetypal way. And then you have her Mars also in Cancer in the middle of it in Pusha. So that Mars is that, it's that masculine energy in one of the most feminine house or signs of Cancer. And so this Mars energy of this like fiery ambition and drive is in this watery place where it can't get a foothold, and it's not comfortable. It's actually debilitated. And so there's this very clear expression then of this song. It's about the frustration of masculine and feminine energy not meeting in a way that feels like they understand each other. There's a lack of understanding, and yet the Mercury at the very end of Ashlesha shows that this is being communicated clearly. The misunderstanding is being communicated clearly as a misunderstanding in a way that has a lot of heart and longing to it, because the sun is in Ashlesha, and that's the heart of the song. So it's really a beautiful expression and dynamic here. And then Venus in Ardra, which yeah, if we go back to Kate Bush's chart, what was her Ardra placement? She had Venus in Ardra as well. So that's amazing. In fact, let me just open up a synastry chart real quick. Kate Bush and running up that hill. And that's pretty amazing. So let's take a look at it. Yeah. So you could see here that Kate Bush is the inner yellow circle and the outer blue one is the song running up that hill. So you can see how her Venus and the song's Venus are both in the middle of Gemini, both in Ardra together. And let's just see at a quick glance if any other things line up like that with the song. Yeah, her sun is also in a 6-degree conjunction with the song's sun. So her heart is in that feminine wisdom of Pushya. Her deep intuition, her soul's expression it's in her third house. It's inspiring her, you know, is her connection to feminine wisdom, really. And then if we go back to, this is her, let's go back to the song real quick. Running up that hill. So the sun here is in the 11th house and it's in Ashlesha. So it's a little bit past Pushya. Mars is in Pushya now. So Mars is kind of being taught that feminine wisdom, but it's frustrated because it's not really in charge of where it's at. It's more in a submissive position where it's learning from this feminine expression of Kate Bush's Pushya, in which her sun is in Pushya. And then the sun of the song, the heart of the song is in this entanglement between masculine and feminine, which is what Ashlesha really is. It's also a very seductive, it represents the seductive side of feminine sexuality. And but ultimately the song is communicating the whole story because Mercury's at the very end of Cancer in its own sign of Ashlesha. And yeah, and then I was just getting at how this Venus in Ardra, and that's the same as Kate Bush. So the song is known publicly, as the 10th house is about what something is publicly known for, and it's the career of something. So this would be the public, career aspect of the song. And Venus, so the song is about the beauty of the conflict. I mean, this is the song that Kate Bush was born to write, born to compose and perform, because her Venus is in Ardra. Her Venus is the ruler of her entire chart because it's the ruler of her ascendant. And everything else I said, that whole process of sect to find the ruler of the chart showed that the Venus actually would be the ruler of her chart. So the songs also has Venus and Ardra, and that's the apparent thing in the chart. In Kate Bush's chart, the Venus is in the second house and the sun is in the third house. So these wouldn't be obvious things. So in a way, the song Running Up That Hill, it's a very clear expression of Kate Bush showing her inner world to the outer world in a very highly beautiful fashion because of the ascendant in Chitra of the song, indicating that. Finally, I guess, yeah, we could go through all the planets and things, but I think maybe let's just jump over to, I don't know, maybe let's look at the Jupiter and Saturn, because I'd like to cover the main planet, all the main planets at least. And let's see, where's the Jupiter is in Shravana. That's the sign of, it's the sign of it's symbolized by an ear, and it's listening. And this is the creativity of the song in the fifth house. So the creative expression of the song is listening to, it's getting this it's getting all of its power from this openness to something divine, to something unknown and mysterious, because Shravana is all about opening up and surrendering to what is not yet known, to have the power to climb up all the way of the mountain of Capricorn. There's a lot of confidence at the beginning of Capricorn with Uttara Ashada, but it's not really at the bulk of the journey. The Shravana and the bulk of the journey, there's this surrender to something unknown, mysterious, to really open up. And that's really like the joy of the song. One of the beautiful things of the song, it's not actually the conflict. It's about this sort of feeling of like looking for an answer, looking for a solution, like wanting to make a deal with God, like having that level of surrender to a possibility to solve a problem, to solve a conflict between the yin and yang energy, or between two people in a relationship. That's really like the cathartic element of the song. And then it has all of this like abundant energy in the fifth house with Jupiter. And then we have Chiron with the part of fortune Rohini. So this shows that the woundedness of the feminine is really where the song succeeds. It has its fortune in showing this religious aspect of the high priestess of the divine feminine, but having Chiron there, where it's the wounded healer, where the song is really, it's like, if we, so many of the things like the sun in Cancer and the Venus in Gemini, these also exist in her chart, except they're on the bottom part of the chart, in the second and third house, instead of the 10th and the 11th of the song. And so the song is about her showing her inner world to the outer world and having success and gains through that with this song. And that Chiron and with the part of fortune in conjunction in Rohini, which is her ascendant is in Rohini. So this is about her divine feminine being expressed in all of the pain of it, all the painful parts of the feminine. Also, it's very interesting that this song has become the #1 song in the country or world because of Stranger Things, the same time period that Roe versus Wade has been taken away. And this feminine pain is being expressed and echoed through this song's popularity. And really, this song is about something very archetypal and deep, about the woundedness of yin energy and the spiritual aspect of how that can be transmuted to something healing through artistic means and through spiritual means in the ninth house, and the good fortune that can come from that transformation that's deeply powerful, that's going to be healing to everyone when it's expressed. And that's what this song does, and that's why it's a number one hit. That's where its fortune comes from, literally, at this point in history. And 37 years after its release, it's actually becoming a number one hit during a very challenging time for women in America. And even though she's a British singer-songwriter, the the directors of the show and actors of the show Stranger Things are all American, and that show is the thing that's brought the song to be a number one hit 37 years after its 1985 release. And then finally, let's look at the Saturn in Vishaka. Now, Saturn in Vishaka, well, Vishaka is also about yin and yang interactions. This is that's exactly what Vishaka is about. And Saturn is about loss and limitations and challenges. So this is just echoing, astrology reading charts can be quite holographic at times, and you'll get all these things that echo the same things. And so the Saturn in Vishaka, it's really echoing this idea of the limitations of feminine and masculine, or yin and yang energies or perspectives being able to communicate, because the second house in Indian astrology is also about speech, and it's about the basic needs being met. And so the basic needs of this relationship between yin and yang are being challenged by Saturn, and that's just what this song is about. And so, yeah, and then we have just more things echoing all of this, like Rahu and Lilith in conjunction with the vertex in the eighth house in Bharani. Bharani is ruled by Yama, the goddess of death, and Rahu has a chaotic element to it with Lilith, the yin, the feminine energy of suffering, because it's the unconscious, wounded part of the moon, of the mind that's hidden, that results in obsessiveness or withdrawal. And having Rahu there could go either way. I mean, this is in the eighth house of mystery. So this just is echoing the frustration of the feminine woundedness that's being expressed through the song, that you could also see here in the Saturn and Vishaka, expressing the limitations of communication between man and woman, and then everything going on in Cancer, which is in the 11th house, where the song has its gains. I'm curious if this midheaven is in Punarvasu or Pusha. Let me see that real quick. It's in the very end of Punarvasu. So the midheaven is what the public sees the most. So along with the ascendant. So the song is known for being very beautiful. And then it gets its gains in the house of 11 through this conflict of the Mars being debilitated, but then, and the sun being longing for that connection, or to make sense of this intertwined, codependent dynamic between yin and yang, feminine and masculine. And then the Mercury as the ruler of that nakshatra, really communicating all this so beautifully in the form of music and lyrics. And the midheaven at the end of Punarvasu shows that even deeper than everything else, there's this appearance of something cosmic in the song. There's something, because the midheaven is what's apparent to the public, and Punarvasu has this resolution to conflict, cosmic, sort of wholeness, oneness. Everything is the way it needs to be, and is karmically, just unfolding the only way it can, in a very beautiful cosmic way. And so even though the feminine is frustrated in Ardra in a way, there's this resolution of what the song is showing. So yeah, there's beauty in the song through its conflict, but the beauty of the song itself between Chitra and Punarvasu, two of the most cosmic nakshatras of the entire zodiac, that's what the song is first and foremost known for. And then when we scratch beneath the surface, that's when we discover the song is about this yin yang imbalance, codependence, masculine feminine woundedness. The masculine is debilitated in the feminine. The Lilith is in this it's in Aries, but it's in the sign of death and challenges in the 8th house, and it goes on and on. And again, the moon, well, yeah, so that's pretty much the whole reading of the chart. If we just want to see who rules the chart, because that's a technique I really like to practice these days, I think it really just gives us a way, it helps us weigh what are the most important parts of the chart. And so the sun is it's a day chart because the sun is above the horizon of the ascendant descendant line. And let's see, the sun is in the 11th house, which is a succedent house, which means it can be the ruler of the chart. And then the moon, so that would be the ruler. And then the moon in a cadent, no, the moon's in an angular house. So it would be a secondary ruler. Okay, so let's see. The sun is the ruler of the chart, means the heart of the song is actually in this longing of Ashlesha from the heart, because the sun is really about the heart. It's about not the heart in terms of petty emotions, but in terms of one's true, deep, true self, higher self, whatever you want to call that. And the dispositor of the sun is the moon, because the sun is it's debilitated in Cancer. And so the moon in the 7th house, and the 7th house is about relationship. So there's this relationship aspect to the gains of the song. The 11th house is about gains and bringing people together, you could say, which Ashlesha is about bringing yin and yang are very intertwined. And so the dispositor of the sun is the moon in Uttara Bhadrapada. So this means that longing of the song is informed by a actually very deep mental understanding of relationships in the 7th house in Uttara Bhadrapada. So there is this deep understanding behind, which is echoed with that Mercury at the end of Cancer. So all of that, it's very clear. And then, in fact, I just want to jump to the ruler of the ascendant is Mercury as well in this Cancer. So a secondary or third ruler of the chart, it would actually be the secondary ruler, would be Mercury itself. So, and then because it's the ruler of the ascendant, because it's the ruler of Virgo that the ascendant is in. And Mercury, the dispositor of Mercury will also be the moon, because the moon and the sun are both in Cancer, and the dispositor is the ruler of the sign these planets are in, which would be the moon. So the moon in Pisces, Uttara Bhadrapada, it's like this deep spiritual knowledge is guiding the intelligence of the song that's all about longing, but there's a deeper understanding behind all of it. And finally, the moon as a ruler, its dispositor would be actually Jupiter. And that would be some deeper spirituality that she's connected to in her creativity, in her private life where the IC is. The song is representing her deeper surrender to God, wanting to make a deal with God, not in a way where she's the one in power, but in a way where she's really being surrendered to, asking for help, like in prayer, basically. So yeah, that's the song. And do I do Hounds of Love on this video, or do I do a separate video? I'm going to do a separate video for Hounds of Love. So I'll just leave the video at that for now. Thank you for watching. If there's anything else you noticed in these charts, please let me know. And feel free to leave it in any comments you'd like to share in the comment section. Like and subscribe. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and it brought you some deeper understanding of this song, which is just one of the best songs ever made, in my opinion. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.